You're the fool the TVA brought in to hunt me down.
Me, I presume.
If anyone's anyone, you're me.
And I'm Noah, and you're listening to A Bite Of,
where we take our current favorite pop culture obsession and enjoy it one nibble at a time.
Woo! Episode 2 of Loki.
Loki!
We finally have 2 episodes. There's only 6 episodes this season, which, WandaVision spoiled us. We got much more than that.
Yeah, by fractions, we're 1/3 of the way through.
Okay, well, I don't need math right when we start, but thank you.
I just like to test you. No.
Before we get into this latest episode of Loki, remember, I was going to say the 5th of November, but we have a Patreon, we have Discord, we follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at A Bite of Pod. Go to our website, find everything there if you want, abiteofpod.com.
Please and thank you.
And finally, make sure you give us that 5-star rating and leave a little review. We'd love to see it.
Oh, just a kind word or two to warm our little hearts. So delightful.
Weird. All right. So before we get into it,
let's take a look back.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Loki episode 1, titled Glorious Purpose. So we pick up right where we left off in the MCU, with Loki grabbing the Tesseract. He is whisked away to the Gobi Desert and then picked up by the wonderful Hunter B-15 and her Minutemen. They bring Loki back to the Time Variance Authority, where he is introduced to the institution by the lovely and wonderful Miss Minutes. Loki stands trial in front of Renslayer, but is then saved by Mobius M. Mobius and made to watch his greatest bits and bobbles. It is then shared that there is a variant messing with the sacred timeline, and it's none other than Loki?
Question mark.
Uh-huh.
That's the biggest mystery of this show, along with how the hell any of this works and where and when the TVA is. There's lots to discuss on this. There's so many questions. I feel like not only are we getting branching timelines, but we're just getting branching questions from every episode.
Like, what is time? Whom is Minutemen?
So grab your kablooies and let's get into it.
Ooh, so chewy. And of course, we have to issue a spoiler alert. Things will be spoiled. You've been alerted. All right, let us officially take a bite of Loki, episode 2, The Variant.
Dun, dun, dun. I mean, I just want to say I am so glad that we got face-to-face with the variant this early because, like I said, 6 episodes. If we didn't find this out later in the show, it would have been a little disappointing because we also don't know. So most of these are supposed to be miniseries. We don't know if some of them might get second seasons. I know that the person that made this has said Loki could lend itself to more seasons. I mean, the TVA is in there, so obviously we could get anything, but I'm glad. Just by the title alone, I was like, yes.
Yeah, and I also think like 1.5-ish episodes of a dark cloaked figure was enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's cliche. I love those type of things, but also you can't be cloaked. It's not always dark, okay?
Yeah, and like you're saying, because it's such a short series, I think that things have to be sped up a little bit. Again, playing with time.
Yeah. Speaking of, Loki's variant is still wreaking havoc on the timeline. They've obviously been doing it for how long? There's
quite a few.
Yeah, it's not really clear. How long have they been searching for these Loki variants? Also not clear. But this time they're wreaking havoc at a Ren Fair in Wisconsin in 1985.
The year of my birth. Not in the town of my birth, but I do enjoy a Ren Fair.
Have you ever been to a Ren Fair?
I've been to one. But from what I remembered, it was delightful. I was only a child. I left with a pretty sweet wooden sword.
There's a really nice one in Texas, surprisingly.
Well, looks like we'll have to make a trip.
Like in the middle of nowhere, like Kerrville.
I don't know what that means.
Exactly.
If it's not Austin, Dallas, or Houston, maybe San Antonio. I don't know what it means.
So this variant is wreaking havoc not only at a Ren Fair, great setting, but to the tune of Holding Out for a Hero by Bonnie Tyler. I just want to point out, and I know everybody else has hammered this to death, but I also have to say it. We have heard this song so much in the last week. It's crazy. We got a trailer for He-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy video game announced, also playing in that. And then we get in this. I'm all here for it, but also seeing it in so many like different mediums, I was like, okay, guys.
I mean, it's a badass song. Let's be honest. It has the 80s synth beats that we all need in our life. And the vocals are just stellar. It makes me feel like maybe I need a hero. Or am I my own hero? Ah.
I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Yes. The answer is yes. You're always your own hero.
I was like, that got too serious.
Listen, they get into some deep philosophy stuff in this episode, so why not start early in our own Abidov episode?
So this variant enchants one of the TVA commanders, known as C-20, using her to take down the other team members before kidnapping her and a bunch of reset charges. Why take C-20? I'm not really sure. It's also not completely fleshed out in the episode, but I mean, whatever. I guess it will.
I think to get info.
But why now?
From them.
Is what it's interesting because if they've been doing this to so many Minutemen teams, why now? I guess because the show's happening now. So it's like
the time is nigh. Also because variant Loki might realize that the TVA has actual Loki and they need to start executing their plan.
Yeah, it's not clear what this Loki does know or where this Loki is from or who.
And this Loki also steals a TemPad, which is the little handheld device that all the Minutemen have.
I was like, I don't know what that is. Did they say the name in the episode?
Yeah, later on, Mobius says it.
Must have been like a passing thing. Like, oh, now we finally got the name to those beep-o beep pads.
But now there's so many time name related devices that I'm confused.
Don't even think about it.
I already forgot the name of the capsules. They're just called rechargers?
Reset charges.
Reset chargers.
Yeah.
Okay.
But don't forget Retcon Baton.
Retcon baton, and there's also a time twister, which is connected to a time collar.
I wonder if we'll see it again in the episode or in the series.
The twister.
Yes.
I don't know.
Right. So the first time we saw this cloaked figure, we saw it from a distance.
Mm.
This time it's very clear that this figure does not have like the build of Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah.
So that immediately piqued my interest.
Oh?
Yeah. Super curious.
Guinness?
Loki is being quizzed by Miss Minutes. We learn that when a timeline reaches red line, which is something that I was very much concerned about in the last episode when we talked about it, they can't reset that timeline and everything goes boom. Reality, as they know it, collapses in on itself.
Everything that we were sort of speculating in the last episode, they made sure to actually make a concrete answer in this episode.
Sometimes you just have to wait.
Just 1 week.
Yeah.
Be patient.
But I am curious. I don't buy it. I don't think that that's what happens, but we'll see.
I have a very outlandish theory that Miss Minutes is actually the evil mastermind of the TVA running the whole shebang.
Oh, probably.
Right?
Yeah. How does a cartoon character come out into a hologram?
And then go back into a computer, but also doesn't want to be swatted because it can get hurt, but it can hear, but it's also recording, but it's also alive. Yeah. Sounds like some minute mischief to me.
We then get Mobius. He comes to collect Loki and tell him of the latest attack, the one that we just saw at the Ren Fair. And he also gives him a sweet TVA jacket. And I like how Loki also tries to like pizzazz it a little bit and he like flips up the collar.
Pop that collar.
Yeah.
Also, my notes right here, it says Loki gets a sweet TVA jacket. We both knew it was sweet.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I want it.
I feel like you could rock it for sure.
I'm not that big of a fan of the color, but I do like the orange.
A little taupe.
No thanks.
Yeah. It's basically they took his jumpsuit and just made it a jacket.
Exactly. They just cut off the
bottom part.
Yeah, the bottom part and
added
the middle part.
A zipper.
Yep.
Done.
So Loki still has the ego of a god, and while B-15 updates the team on the latest attack, Loki also wants to make it clear that he is the superior Loki out there over all those other variants. B-15 points out the large variant on the back of his jacket. Not nice. And she also calls him a cosmic mistake. So these two are bickering a little bit back and forth. I mean, I feel like B-15 does have a bit of an ego on them, and so does Loki. So it's kind of fun to see them argue back and forth. Mobius points out that not all the variants look like the Loki we know, which makes sense considering the Loki variant we saw at the Ren Fair does have a different body.
Right.
I just wanted to point that out.
He does bring up, like, I don't know how the technology there works, but there's like a middle of the standing huddle hologram that comes up with all the different Lokis. Are they actual Lokis? Did you recognize any of them?
No.
Oh, made up ones for the show, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, in the comics, there's different universes. I mean, the main, I guess, call it the sacred timeline in the comics, the 616 is the main Earth.
Right.
But, I mean, as there's 616 different Earths, I don't really know.
There could be many a Loki.
Exactly. But it brings up the question, like, where are all these Loki variants coming from?
Mm-hmm.
The Loki we know can change shape for long periods of time, but he's still the same person inside. So these variants, is he not aware of them? Like, where are they coming from? Because if there's supposed to be one sacred timeline, why is there a bunch of Lokis jumping around? And are there other variants of other people just spread throughout time? So I think it's interesting. So I don't think, again, we're getting all the correct information, and that's because of the TVA.
And I think it also leads back to, why are there draws of Infinity Stones? Are all these Infinity Stones from the same Earth that we know? Are they from other ones with these other variants?
I think it's going to be interesting to see if this was caused with him messing with the Tesseract, or, I mean, I don't know. Anytime time travel or timey-wimey stuff is involved, it always gets a little confusing. But we'll find out.
The statement of "we didn't start the fire" by Billy Joel actually goes back to Loki being the one that started all of the fires.
Right. So while Mobius talks about the different variants, Loki gives some dirt on how the powers work a little bit, because Mobius mentions, like, this Loki can do this and that. So he explains that illusion casting and duplication are two distinct powers. Again, with this information, he is kind of proving to Mobius that he does have some insight and that it was worth keeping him around. So that's good. But it's curious because I believe Loki can do both. So it's interesting that Loki's distinguishing the two, maybe because he can do it or he knows about them.
Well, I think it's because Mobius was kind of lumping it into one thing, and Loki was setting the record straight of saying, no, you have this wrong. Let me tell you exactly how my powers work. They're two separate things: illusion projection and duplication casting. One of them is myself, one of them is other things. He's like, don't try and demean my powers. This is my greatness.
Right. I mean, there's that ego again.
Yeah.
Moby.
Yes. Bring in the beats.
Mobius offers a potential meeting with the timekeepers to entice Loki to behave when they go and investigate this Ren Fair attack. We then see CSI Loki and gang travel to the scene of the Ren Fair attack. As they make their way to the tent that the attack took place, we also find out how the reset charges work a little bit. So they prune the affected area of the timeline so that way it can heal. So it doesn't reset everything, it just resets the things that affected that timeline. So I thought that was interesting because, I mean, I just assumed that because you see those lines go from the sacred timeline, you're like, oh, it just erases everything back to the timeline, but it wouldn't make sense.
Right, but it also raises questions about what happens to the people who are existing in that timeline. So not the variant that's causing the trouble, but everyone else. Is it like a Men in Black type situation where their brain just gets erased?
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that this is where, but it also makes sense as far as why nobody would know about the TVA. So maybe it is mostly like the Men in Black, because you would think out of all of the movies we've seen so far, and the TVA has been kind of involved throughout all of it, we just didn't know about it, because we would know if stuff reset or if the Avengers did something that wasn't supposed to happen. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, yeah.
We all just need a Miss Minutes pamphlet. Just with some bullet points just to help us through this. I'm not even looking for the full manual. Just one or two really key things about what's happening when things are getting pruned.
So while they're there, they only have a set amount of time to reset the timeline. And Loki knows that, especially from the last time that he went out with them. Loki acts like he knows something about what the variant really wants, which is him, so that they can overthrow the TVA. That's how he explains it. And he tells Mobius that he must speak with the timekeepers immediately. Like, he's just trying to see these space lizards constantly, because it's not clear really what his intentions are, but we know that he wants to get to the timekeepers. Be that to actually reset something, maybe to get Asgard back and his brother and his mother and everybody else, or to actually overthrow it and harness the greatest power in the universe.
And I feel like because of his ego, there's a little piece of Loki that it's just irking him that in the TVA, there's something that's more powerful than he is.
Oh, yeah.
He's God level. And these are the space lizards. Space lizards, gods, humans, TVA somewhere else in there.
Who knows where the TVA is even at. So despite trying to waste time, Mobius is totally onto his game, which catches Loki off guard. I still think that Loki is not, until this episode, he hasn't grasped that, like, oh, maybe not everybody's as gullible as I thought they were. Because every time Mobius is like, no, you're lying. I know you're lying. Because I don't think Loki or Mobius has any stake in anything. Like, if he believes him, what's going to happen? He could just bring him back to the TVA. Like, he's like, he can control the whole situation.
Well, right. And also, these aren't just your run-of-the-mill humans. These are beings that have knowledge of time. It's not just a regular person he's talking to. They've seen so many people throughout their entire existence, however long that is, trying to weasel their way out of situations like this.
Yeah, especially variants that get brought to the TVA.
Totally.
So, back at the TVA, Mobius reports to Judge Renslayer. By the way, her office has giant statues of the timekeepers overlooking her office, which is terrifying.
Always looking down at her, watching every move.
I believe there was a poster that says something like that, like always watching. Or something like
you're
that.
right.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't like it. Not my favorite decor.
No, it's also, there's relaxing theremin music happening.
Yeah. Oh, I do like a theremin.
That weird instrument that goes like, wow. I mean, I'm down for some chill hop or maybe some ocean waves, but this is bizarre.
In this scene, we see that it's obvious that there's some like mutual adoration going on between them, but like it might seem more. In this scene, it made me feel like Renslayer had more platonic feelings for Mobius, but Mobius might feel a little bit more. So it was an interesting dynamic to see between the two. It's hard to gauge it. I just know that there's something more there.
Yeah, I think it definitely furthers the relationship a little more. You had brought it up in our last episode about that little aside they had on the stand.
Mm-hmm.
And in this one, we have that whole little bit with the rings on the side table, which shows that he's there a lot.
Right.
And he's made like 3 pretty harsh rings in her probably mahogany table.
I mean, can't you just reset it? No.
I mean, they're like, no, we can reset everything else except for damaged wood.
I am with this and just like seeing these two TVA people or whatever they are interact and like, why aren't they really engaging in their feelings? Maybe because there's like nepotism possibly, but how does it work? Like, can people be in love? Can people get married there? Are there TVA babies? Are there TVA romances? Where do the TVA people come from? Like, were they supposedly made? It's so, like, again, I said, this episode raised more questions, not all necessarily pertaining to the plot, but I'm just curious.
No, I think it's an interesting thing. I had a lot of questions as well about them as beings, whether we're calling them humans or agents or whatever it is, because we see things like them collecting artifacts from Earth. So they're interested in that. We had the guy in the last episode with the cat mug and the cat calendar. And then we also have someone in this episode listening to music in the library. So it's weird. They have an appreciation for these things, but where does it come from? Is it things that is just specifically made for the TVA? Are they getting it from Earth? How does their life work?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure they get it from Earth only because Renslayer has that like trophy wall of things from past missions. But I mean, it's interesting. Casey from the first episode doesn't even know what a fish is.
Right.
Something as simple as that. I guess fish have never messed with the timeline, so they never needed to know about it. But it is interesting.
They also have snacks they eat.
Right. They do. I mean, we haven't seen much of what they eat, but definitely salads and Cokes.
Salt, pepper. Boku, the famous juice drink from the early 90s.
I have no idea what that is.
Oh my God. So Boku was a box drink, was a box juice made for adults. It was supposed to be sophisticated.
Right. Did it have alcohol in it?
No. It was just juice. It didn't have a straw, but it was a box juice.
What kind of juice?
Oh, like cran grape and your usual juice flavors.
So it was just juice boxes, but they were like, hey, there's no like fun colors on it. Here you go.
Exactly.
Well, that's
so adults can feel cool while
boring.
drinking their juice.
Why don't you just buy a jug of juice?
Buy a jug of juice, you fools!
So in this conversation, back to the episode, the judge isn't sure about Loki's worth to the TVA and thinks that Mobius just has a soft spot for broken things. They argue about whether Loki can change without the timekeepers decreeing it. Renslayer is very keen on only doing what the timekeepers would approve and what they want to do. And from there, conversation, we learn that Mobius, while a TVA agent, has never met the head bosses. He's never met the timekeepers. So everything he knows about them comes from Renslayer. So if she's hiding something about them, he wouldn't know about it. And this is super sus. It's super suspicious. I don't like it.
Well, I think there are a lot of sus things in this scene. We have that thing about him liking broken things. What is she referring to? What other past people has he tried to fix? Is she referring to herself? Did he help her at a point in time when she was feeling broken? What about how he's pointing out artifacts in her room and he's like, when did you get that? When did you get this? And she's like, well, I work with other agents. But he seems to be questioning things like he should know what's in there, and there are things there that are not familiar.
I mean, that place does seem pretty big, though.
She just is getting more and more suspicious.
I mean, I don't want to say that she is necessarily somebody that's bad. She might be somebody that doesn't know everything, and she just thinks that she knows things, and she might be getting manipulated in some type of way. Who knows?
It's a cult.
Right.
The TVA is a cult.
I agreed so quickly with that.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, I think until we see the timekeepers, I'm going to keep that at a very, very long distance to think that they're actually real or not. I'm holding out that it's Kang the Conqueror because Renslayer and Kang the Conqueror have ties, and that's what I'm going with. I'm not going to say it's a for sure thing. I won't be disappointed if it doesn't happen, but it's a theory.
We'll just pin it.
Yeah.
Put a pin in it. We'll come back.
So Mobius leaves the room, and Loki tries to plead his case for his trickery to Mobius. Mobius tells him that he has one last chance. Just as we heard Renslayer, she's like, I can't anymore. Like, you just need to figure this out. As Mobius gets a little more frustrated with Loki's trying to, push his trickery and him getting in the way of investigations aside, Mobius is like, I would have thought that your ego about a variant being better than you would have just made you help. Not because I think you're a hero or because you believe in the TVA, but because you're egotistical and you want to be the best.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to see that, like, okay, we talked about in the first episode, like, he kind of does care about Loki. He might, but it's the whole time he was betting on Loki just wanting to do it just to be the best, which isn't a bad bet to do, I think.
I think for Mobius, he's seen his entire timeline. He knows what he ends up becoming, how he sort of ends up sacrificing himself for his brother. Mobius sees Loki die at the hands of Thanos, so he knows that his timeline ultimately has some good in it. So he has that little insight into who Loki is, and he's hoping that'll come out again.
Maybe. I mean, he did say to Renslayer, like, you don't think he could change? She doesn't believe so because the timekeepers are the one that decree everything. They make all the decisions. So it's, I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, I'm still curious on what Mobius really thinks. Like, is he going to go against the TVA at some point? I'd hope so, because I like him and Loki together.
Mm-hmm.
I like that pair.
I also think it's just so interesting to have the main character of a series be a sort of unreliable narrator, in a sense. We're never sure what Loki's thinking.
Yeah, which always makes it fun. And I think that's why people enjoy him so much, because you never know.
Yeah.
So Loki's punishment is researching variant files. That's what he has to do. He goes and asks the file clerk if he could see files pertaining to the creation of the TVA. Nope, that's classified. The beginning of time, classified. The end of time, also classified. So he can't say anything, but she ends up giving him only his files. So in his files, he actually does discover a real clue. Though he found out about his own death in the last episode, he's just as devastated when he reads about the future destruction of Asgard. Which, I mean, seeing how upset Loki gets about this stuff, about a homeworld and people that he wanted to rule, not necessarily conquer every time, see him get this upset, it's another reason why people like him.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's trickery. That doesn't always mean murder and always mean trying to conquer. So, I mean, he's just so complicated. Very complicated. And again, we never know what he's really thinking. But we do know he loves his people, or at least his mother and his brother. Sometimes his father.
It represents his home, his family. I mean, there might be a stuffed animal he left behind that he's really going to miss.
Mean.
Just saying.
So a light bulb goes off in his head when he notes that there was 0 variance energy detected during Ragnarok. He goes and finds Mobius in the TVA cafeteria and explains his theory that a variant has been hiding in apocalyptic events between attacks, demonstrating the idea by destroying the agent's salad and stealing Casey's drink.
The Boku I mentioned before.
That's
salt.
Boku.
Yeah, that's Boku.
Okay.
There's salt, there's pepper, there's salad, there's Boku, there's metaphors all over the place, but Loki gets his point across.
He does. I want to be taught by Loki because it also, if it involves food, I'm here for it.
Also, vigorous shaking of spices.
So nothing the variant did would cause a timeline to branch, since all the evidence would be destroyed once the apocalyptic event happened. Makes total sense. I don't know why the TVA didn't think about this. Like, they know about it. Like, they know apocalyptic events. Like, they don't have to prune them or anything like that. It just does it. But I don't know why they didn't put that together. They needed Loki, I guess, to be like, that's where I would hide.
They needed that mischievous mind.
Seeing Loki shake the salt and pepper vigorously
Yes.
was something I never thought that I would enjoy nor see in anything.
The world needed it.
So Loki wants to test this theory, but since his first field trip was a disaster and also has a long history of backstabbing,
50 times.
about 50 times, Mobius isn't too keen on letting him loose on the timeline again, but ends up caving and being like, okay, let's do it. They wind up in Pompeii in 79 AD, which walk with me here. This reminds me of a Doctor Who episode. I already said that the show reminds me of Doctor Who, not only in the music and some of the themes and the jumping around timelines in different areas, but there's an episode called The Fires of Pompeii, where David Tennant, the Doctor at the time, along with his companion Donna, if anybody's a Doctor Who fan, I love Donna as his companion, amazing. They have to leave people behind in Pompeii as Mount Vesuvius is erupting. We also see that one of the people left behind is none other than Peter Capaldi, who plays a doctor at a later date. So I thought that was interesting.
Whoa.
Don't worry, the doctor goes back and saves his family against his will of messing up the timeline and all of that stuff. So I just thought it was interesting that dealing with timelines and paradoxes, that also in Doctor Who, they went to Pompeii. I feel like that's like a staple for timeline stuff.
What if there was a show where they skipped around time and didn't give a hot damn about the changes that they made?
Wouldn't
Wouldn't that be kind of fun?
Maybe.
You just come back, oh, dinosaurs are still here. It's fine.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean, I guess it would just get crazy though.
everything's floating on lava.
It would be almost the opposite. Like the writers wouldn't have to make sure it's historically accurate. They would have to make sure their history is historically accurate. So if they made dinosaurs live, if they went back to the present or wherever these people in the show are doing, dinosaurs have to be alive and whatever else that affected. So I think that's too much work.
So they'd have to create their own sacred timeline by destroying a real sacred timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Wowzers.
So Mobius wants to test the theory with something small, like bird noises. I don't know why. When does Loki do anything small or subtle?
Never.
Not usually, not unless he's trying to sneak around. Not in this situation.
And especially when he knows he's going to be right.
Exactly. So he charges forward, he frees a cart of goats and yells in Latin to gather the crowd that they're all about to die and he's from the future. Right? He questions it a little bit, and that made me question it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why at the beginning I was like, wait, when and where are they? Dun, dun, dun.
And Mobius doesn't answer.
He doesn't answer. So Mount Vesuvius explodes on cue, and as the god of mischief enjoys the destruction, Mobius sees that there are no variance energy detected. So theory proven. Theory right. What they have to do now is search for naturally occurring apocalypses. So they go back to the TVA. I have a big gripe about this with a bureau, whatever you want to call it, that's so advanced or has access to anything in any time period, any timeline, whatever. why do they not have a computer
No
system?
Google.
Control F? What?
Search, find, function, apocalypse?
I don't know.
I thought the same thing. It seems that their computers are solely there to track the sacred timeline.
Or for Miss Minutes to travel around, I guess.
Well, she's a hot little toddy. She can do it if she wants.
Yeah, super weird, but they're keeping with that drab DMV aesthetic of like the 1990s, I
Well,
guess.
listen, the TVA librarians and archivists need jobs, so they can't just make everything go on a computer or make it searchable like on the darn Google.
So after they search for a while, they take a little break. They go back to the cafeteria. Loki normally thinks everyone he meets is a gullible idiot, mostly his brother. He seems to be truly fascinated here by Mobius, the contradictions of Mobius. So he questions him about his love for jet skis, even though he's never been on one. When are we going to see in this show Mobius on a jet ski? Because I feel like Loki would do that for him.
That's the ultimate mid-credit scene in the final episode of the show.
Okay, you know what? If that is the mid-credit scene, I'll like it, but it's something big better happen.
Dinosaurs are back, folks. I love he says, like, there was a brief shining moment where form and function came together, and it was the jet ski. This sort of reminds me, though, of my favorite intergalactic train conductor from the Fantastic Four comic,
Mm-hmm.
because he has an affinity for Earth things. He loves Earth trains. He wants his outfits to be as real to Earth-like as possible. So it's so funny that people in the TVA are obsessed with Earth things.
Interesting.
And Mobius sees the jet ski as his thing.
Maybe Mobius is that train guy, and we just figured out that he's going to let Loki out of TVA. We got it.
Toot.
But he has to strip first.
That's right. Another Loki strip scene.
He also, he questions, like, why would anybody that's seemingly intelligent believes 3 magic lizards created the TVA? But Mobius also has a counterpoint and points out that Loki's origin story sounds just as ridiculous, but Loki finds that his continued faith in it is just, he can't stomach it. Like, he's like, okay, I see what you're saying. Like, yes, if I tell you I'm this god and 9 realms and all of that stuff, it sounds a little crazy. But he's blindly following all this. Like, he's constantly at a job, which is one weird. Like, where's your home? Where's your room? Where's your bed? Where's your house? Where's all that stuff? But what, like, you've never seen your bosses? Is that not weird? Not weird to you, Mobius? Okay, I guess not. It's fine.
As George Michael put it, you got to have faith. But you're right. It's Mobius is just like blindly living this life. And even like I don't know, like Renslayer too. She's just doing what these things tell her.
Or she is the one giving orders. Who knows? I mean, I don't believe her. Whatever she says, I don't believe it. Because why are the timekeepers a secret? Like,
Right.
If they are these all-powerful beings, like, why is it a secret? Why can't people go talk to them? Like, okay, maybe they're busy, but have like a do not disturb thing on the door, mate? I don't know.
Do a beautiful little, commercial every day. Hey everyone, it's us morning announcements.
Oh, no.
The 3 lizards.
No, actually, I would hate that. Working from home, we have these like morning meetings. Like, what are you going to do for the day? I don't know. Same thing I do every day.
Pinky, try to take over the world. That's where I thought that was going.
But in this conversation, I did like how Loki asked, like, what happens at the end? What's keeping the timekeepers from just ending it or letting know what happens at the end? Or is it still growing? So it's interesting that they can hop from different times, but at one point, can they not go to?
Right. And it's funny. It's almost like they've created the sacred timeline and they got to a certain point and they're like, oh crap, you guys, what do we do now?
Right.
How do we end it? It's weird.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, he
hopefully.
says they're untangling the epilogue from its infinite branches.
Don't know what that means.
I mean, poetic and gorgeous. It means nothing to me.
Right, exactly. Okay. At what point?
Right.
What time period?
How many branches?
So eventually, though, through their discussion, Mobius remembers the boy with the kablooey candy. They use it to pinpoint exactly where the variant might be hiding. After convincing Renslayer that they know where their variant is. She's like, okay, again, Loki has one chance, so he better not screw it up. We find out that they're hiding at a Roxcart store in Haven Hills in 2050. So we can go to 2050. We can go to the future a little bit. Mobius takes Loki and the rest of the time cops to the store with impending hurricane included. I did also want to point out, so little Marvel brain here working. Roxcart, the two X's, it cannot be a coincidence, especially dealing with an Asgardian here. There is a company, a conglomerate in the Marvel Comics called Roxxon. And the people throughout there have had villains, people have run it, Minotaurs from there. They have direct conflicts with Thor and Loki a lot. So this is like one of the first time, well, I'd say like maybe second time that it's been mentioned or we've seen something. So it's interesting that we keep creeping closer to this company that's so prevalent in the Marvel Comics.
I mean, it makes total sense that an evil corporation named Roxxon would start as a superstore named Roxcart. I'm serious.
But I don't think
evil
it's
big box stores.
But I don't think it started there. So that's the interesting part. I'm curious if they're ever going to introduce them fully in the MCU, or it's just going to be fun little stuff like that.
When the apocalypse hit my family and destroyed the Roxcart stores, we had to get back at the Asgardians for not protecting us.
Right. So Loki uses his magic to dry himself off from the downpour, but it's pretty obvious pretty quickly that he's not the only one that's using magic here. The group splits up. Never, ever split up. It never works out.
Why?
Ever.
Why does anybody have to go in two different directions?
They don't. I mean, the store is not that big, one.
Loki has magic. You are the time variance authority. You have ways around this. I'm sure you do. Open a portal, pop your head through. Who's out there? Nobody. Okay, come back in.
Right.
So easy.
Right. Also, okay, so they're looking for the commander that went missing. This variant of Loki took this person through a door that the time variance uses with their technology.
Yes.
Do they also not have trackers with where their instruments are and where doors are being opened?
Yeah, even the temp pad, right? That has like a little homing beacon signal on it. Maybe, temp pad 5482B1 has gone missing. Shut it down.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the TVA is so smart that they are just dumb in some aspects. They're like, we don't need nothing could ever go wrong.
No one has ever thwarted them like this.
I guess so. Never in the history of ever.
Right. Even though they've lived this quite a few times.
Right.
Forever infinity.
I still want to know, are there TVA babies or are these people just made at like 30 to 50? Like that's how they come out.
I think they come out middle-aged, middle management in beige wear, and that's about it. That's all they do. You're totally right.
God, is there some like sorting hat thing of like what you're going to do in the TVA? Like, I got to know, like, how do these people get their jobs?
Minutemen, yay! Or do you just appear one day and that's it?
So back at Roxcart, Loki and B-15 meet a customer who quickly reveals that the variant is indeed here by enchanting people.
Wink, wink.
Right. So it seems that this variant can enchant others while also still inhibiting their body, which I think is pretty interesting. I think it's like a next level possession type thing. So I don't know what the limit is. Maybe they can only do one person at a time.
I call it someone gets greened.
Oh, yeah.
They just get greened. A little green flash goes and then they're greened.
Yeah. It is funny, though, that Loki finds us cowardly. Like, if he's so well versed in the powers of Loki, I do think it's funny that he's dealing with himself. So it's like, oh, so how does it feel looking in the mirror, dude?
Also, speaking of powers of Loki, we know he has his magic back because he dried himself off.
Right.
Why is he doing shape-shifting mischief?
I don't, this whole... Okay. My only grievance with Loki...
He's got gripes.
...in the MCU is that he's never fully been the Loki that I know. And I'm not trying to be like, oh, it needs to be comic accurate. That's not what I'm trying to say. He's done illusions. He's done all that. That's fine. But Loki is a sorcerer. He
Right.
does magic.
Right.
Even him drying his clothes off like that, I don't think we've ever seen him do anything like that in the MCU before. So I'm waiting for him to get a little more magic-y because I'm really hoping that he shows up in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness because I need my magic trios of Wanda, Loki, and Doctor Strange.
Oh,
And Doctor Strange just trying to wrangle these two.
the Trinity.
So while they meet this customer that is enchanted, B-15 ends up getting enchanted as well. And then shortly after that, a store clerk named Randy. The variant begins to argue with Loki over which of them is truly the variant and who is the superior. So again, we're having the battle of the egos here.
Mm-hmm.
Who is really the superior? Who is really the variant? At this point, I'm going to say the variant is because the variant, one, still hasn't shown their face, has annoyed the hell out of everybody, has escaped the TVA how many times, and is
Stolen billions of dollars worth of technology.
and is using magic. So
Yeah. Anything you can do, I can do better.
3-0, Loki. I'm sorry.
Ooh, you're losing, my friend.
So just like Mobius, we've also been wondering if Loki is willing to turn over a new leaf. He tells the variant that his work with the TVA has all been a ploy to eventually take it over, and he also needs a left hand. Is he telling the truth here? Who knows? It's anybody's guess. Only Loki knows at this point.
Does Loki even know?
I don't know.
Right?
Maybe not.
Right.
The variant isn't interested in ruling the TVA, and Loki starts to understand Thor's frustration at dealing with him in the past because talking to himself is exhausting. He gets annoyed.
There's an answer for everything, and he can't get anywhere.
While Loki are arguing with each other, Mobius finds C-20 bound up in the security office, freaked out that she's revealed the location of the timekeepers.
And she keeps saying over and over again, it's real, it's real, it's real.
Mean, what's real?
What's real? Whom?
The
When?
timekeepers?
That's what I was...
You know, I am interested.
Lizards?
Obviously, that's just added to the mystery and another branch of questions that we have.
Turns out it was jet skis all along. They're real.
I mean, yeah, I like that secret. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe everything's been a lie, or maybe, I don't know. It's interesting. I guess we'll find out. I do have a theory that this whole, like, the TVA has been inside the quantum realm this whole time.
Bah!
Because they haven't necessarily said that they're in null space. Like, they've said they're outside of time. But the Avengers went into the quantum realm to time travel. So, connecting a little bit. I don't know.
Oh, man.
Just putting that out
It's just like, they're like, we are. We is. That's all you need to know.
When we get back to Loki, it's still not obvious whether Loki is trying to make a deal with the variant or trying to stall for the TVA. But he notices a bunch of reset charges threaded throughout the store and shelves, and that's when the variant attacks him. Because I think with Loki recognizing what's happening, they're going to start brawling a little bit. Loki defends himself with a vacuum cleaner against a very, very large man.
Yes. There's like a Roomba vacuum. There's a vacuum with a cord and a hose. It's just all the housewares come to his defenses.
I mean, they were in house supplies. Got to grab what you got to grab.
Heck yeah.
But despite being a god, he winds up getting thrown around, which is silly. I mean, he's a god. I've seen him fight better than that. Like, at this point, are we expecting a great fight scene with this character? You know what I mean? Like, he has not yet shown action-y stuff, which he can. I mean, he knows magic.
Maybe he's better with his daggers.
Maybe.
He relies on his weapons.
I mean, he used his horned helm in Ragnarok, which was amazing. I guess this hasn't happened yet, so maybe he learned how to fight on Sakaar with Thor.
Oh, there you
and
go.
Hulk. You know, I don't know.
Also, we're back with the hair flips. In this fight scene, I mean, it's like back to back to back hair flip, hair flip, hair flip.
He has that glorious hair. He needs to get it out
I
of his
think
face.
that was a decision made by Hiddleston that Loki would not take his hand and sweep his hair back. He would hair flip.
Yeah. How dare. I'm not going to touch this glorious hair. Maybe I have stuff on it.
Wah, wah.
Totally agree.
Product, you're right.
So after their fight, the variant's last enchantment breaks, and they finally step out of the shadows. Loki comes face to face with Lady Loki, question mark, question mark, question mark, played by Sophia Di Martino.
Yes.
Great casting choice. But there's a lot of interesting things on this character. Notice the broken horn on the helm, the blonde hair, which Lady Loki is literally just
Usually depicted with dark hair.
exactly, looks just like Loki, but with feminine features.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting choices here. I'm not fully convinced that this is Lady Loki. We'll see. I have some theories about that after we get done. We're almost there. So Lady Loki, or whomever they are, bombs the sacred timeline with a whole lot of reset charges. They all disappear through these mini like doorways.
Yeah.
Amazing. Super cool. Thought it was a great scene. We get the whole place turns red. Also a great scene. Reminds me of the Daredevil TV show. There's a really great fight scene where the whole thing was red.
Ooh.
So the entire TVA freaks out as they watch the timeline branch. Judge Renslayer heads out herself to probably try to stop it or do whatever she can. She grabs some weapon.
She grabs her recon baton.
Was that what it was?
Yeah, because it's next to a hunter helmet, a something or other, which makes me think that she's risen through the ranks and she was once a hunter.
Oh. From rags to judges.
Time Lord, right-hand person.
Mobius races to find Loki in the store before he can join Lady Loki and stab all of them in the back. As Lady opens up a portal to escape, Loki has a decision to make. Stay and help the TVA, or follow Lady Loki / whoever this is through the portal. To our kind of not surprise, but Mobius's maybe surprise, he disappears into the portal. But whether it's to create more mischief with Lady Loki / whoever this is, or to stop her, he only knows.
I think it's the latter. I believe that even if it's not for the TVA, it's for his own gain. He needs to go and follow this variant Loki to find out what they're doing.
Right.
It's not to join them. It's to see what their plan is.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be interesting. I know that in the teasers and trailers for the show, we have seen some scene where they go to Vormir, where the infamous Soul Stone is. And a lot of people thought that Black Widow was there with him.
Huh.
Seeing the hair now on this character, obviously sitting there with Lady Loki / whomever this is, and they're talking. So maybe one of them has a change of heart. Maybe Loki comes up with a better plan. Who knows? It's not really clear, but we know that at some point that's going to happen. So it's interesting. I'm curious to see where this goes. So thoughts.
Hit it.
I have some thoughts about this. Okay. Buckle up. I have like a Lady Loki, like crazy Charlie Day conspiracy board thing going on in my head.
I'm ready for it. I'm bloodshot.
So thoughts on the broken horn.
Mm-hmm.
The broken left horn is something that we've seen before in another version of Loki that likes to occupy other people's bodies. So in the comics, in a 2014 series, Loki, Agent of Asgard, very good series. Everybody should read that if you love this character / the Thor mythos. A newer, younger version of Loki sets off to erase his prior version's crimes for the sake of Asgard. So at this point, Loki is Kid Loki, or a younger version of himself.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want to be the Loki that he's always destined to be, or people always think he's going to be. Along the way, he struggles not only with the history of his actions under his name, but his very nature as a trickster god and so I think that's interesting. I wonder if that connects. Maybe this Lady Loki / whoever they are isn't doing a bad thing, and they know something that our Loki / we don't know yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that, just like with our Loki that we know and love, I don't think you can ever place him as a villain always. So I'm hesitant to be like, this is the bad guy. Definitely the antagonist at the moment for our Loki, but not maybe the villain? You know?
I gotcha.
So thoughts on if this is Lady Loki, or it would be an interesting direction for this character if it was actually Enchantress.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a villain / very popular character in the comics known as Enchantress, aka Amora. Loves to enchant people. Also, their power set is green, and they have blonde hair. So the blonde hair choice immediately stuck out to me. If this was Lady Loki, why the blonde hair? Interesting pick.
I also want to mention that if you're a longtime listener of a Bite of Podcast, you might know who the Enchantress is due to a little special segment during the WandaVision season called Mystery Marvels. And I believe part of her thing is that she was trying to like get Thor in the sack.
Oh, yeah. The comic counterpart is one of those concepts that doesn't really hold up well.
Yeah.
Once you really take a closer look. Like, she's depicted as a vain and petty character, but very pretty and blonde.
Yeah.
And she's not sent to plague Thor, but to eliminate his love interest, which is Jane Foster.
Oh.
But it's so, I mean, of course, comics in like the 1960s being what they are, the Enchantress can't help but have her own romantic feelings for the God of Thunder. So it's all this big, like, okay. The character has evolved since then, and she's a very formidable character. The choice to have this Lady Loki be blonde and also like to enchant people is very on the nose. I think it's a little too late for the MCU to introduce this big Thor villain. Also, Asgard's destroyed. So
R.I.P.
R.I.P. So last theory. Last one I have.
Hit it.
It's Lady Loki and a character called Sylvie mixed.
Ooh.
So some sleuths online found out that if you have credits in a different language, you'll see that DiMartino's character that is listed as variant in the English one.
Yeah.
Actually, there it's listed as Sylvie.
Ah.
So Sylvie, they're just like your average girl living in Broxton, Oklahoma. That's in this point in the comics, Asgard has been brought to Earth. It's like heaven on Earth, whatever. Asgard got destroyed, so they bring it here, kind of like what's happening in the MCU. Like Valkyrie was here on Earth trying to rebuild Asgard with the remaining survivors.
Yep.
So she wakes up one day with powers. She also looks a lot like Enchantress. I just want to point that out. She has the blonde hair. It's short. Her power set is also green. Loki personally explains to Sylvie her existence. He states that he likes the idea of creating a mortal that suspects she's one of the Asgardians. So it is assumed that she was in fact never alive until she was created by Loki, her existence and memories perhaps being a part of this as well. It's an interesting story with somebody having identity issues and stuff like that. But this person, after they develop powers, they like go and join the Avengers. They talk in like an Asgardian, way, even though that's not originally what they were. So this character being called Sylvie on there, but looking like the Enchantress and kind of having similar power sets between them, I feel like they're just mixing these two together. Because Sylvie she's not a prevalent character in comics, but I think going along with the mythos, it's pretty cool that they're involving that.
So the question that I have, which I don't know if you can answer, this is just maybe a rhetorical question, is, so we've taken aspects of Sylvie, we've taken aspects of Enchantress, we've dressed them in Loki garb, but why would they need to set the sacred timeline on fire?
I mean, who knows? There was a moment where our Loki called the variant Loki, and that variant
don't
was
call
like,
me that.
Right. They were like, don't call me that. So it's interesting. I don't know if there's they want to distance themselves. That's why I brought up Loki, Agent of Asgard, because they wanted to distance themselves from being Loki. So I mean, your guess is as good as mine. I think it's super interesting. There's so many questions, as always, with these things, but I'm so invested in this. I'm like, okay, I thought it was just going to be jumping around timelines and stuff, but it's a little deeper than that, and I think it's pretty interesting.
I'm also excited to see Loki now not at the TVA, right? Because these last two episodes really heavily took place in the TVA, him learning the ranks there, what's going on, what's happening. Now he's escaped.
Yeah, I mean, that is a good point, because TVA is fun. We get to see Casey and all of them and Miss Minutes, but we want to see more time jumping. And being with this variant, this whomever they are, they're just going everywhere they want. So, I mean, the timeline seems to be anybody's bet at this point. That brings me to my last thing I wanted to point out. Trust me, it takes everything in my willpower to not just list off Easter eggs in these episodes at the end of it. If y'all remember in the TVA, when the reset charges are going around and you see the timeline branching, on all of those monitors that we see in Renslayer's office, the TVA members looking at the monitors, there's places mentioned in timelines where there's a branch starting. So I just wanted to name some of them because I think it's interesting and why those places. One that we see is Vormir, which is the location of the Soul Stone. And we saw this in the teaser trailers, which I had just talked about. We see Asgard. This shouldn't need any further explanation, but maybe the show brings us there at some point.
Okay.
Which I think would be interesting. We see Jotunheim, the realm of frost giants, and also where Loki is from. We see Hala, which is the Kree homeworld, a place that certainly won't be getting any less significant in the MCU anytime soon.
Right.
We see Xandar, the homeworld and headquarters of the Nova Corps. This was in Guardians of the Galaxy. We saw this. We're probably due for eventually more Nova stuff because of that tease at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy 2 with, Adam Warlock possibly being hinted at. There's a lot that needs to be explaining there, but interesting that it's on there. Ego, Kurt Russell, cosmic deadbeat dad extraordinaire.
Yeah.
From Guardians of the Galaxy 2, another connection to and Titan, the homeworld of the dreaded Thanos. Uh-oh.
So basically, the variant is undoing the entire MCU up until this point.
I mean, if you point to all of those are huge major things, because a lot of our heroes / villains wouldn't be able to succeed with a lot of things happening there. So maybe, I don't know what their end game is. There's also locations on there that I have no idea what they are or what they could possibly mean. I know there was a lot of US locations, some in like the 1940s. So people were like, oh, maybe that's when Steve went back with
Captain
Peggy.
America. Yeah.
Which I want to point out, and I didn't mention it in the first episode. Everybody's thinking Peggy is at the TVA.
Oh, that's right.
Because when Loki gets there and he gets the time twister for the first time, there's a Minuteman escorting a woman behind him very quickly that looks just like Peggy Carter.
Yeah.
So interesting things are happening.
All I know is that the TVA be getting Hunter and Minutemen teams out right meow to start getting those little things pruned.
Yeah, I'm just curious on if they're going to be able to get to all of them in time, or if this is what starts the multiverse of madness. Because if it goes past Redline and it is true that they can't reset it once it's past that, then
Bring in Doctor Strange.
Some of these branches are going to go cuckoo bananas.
Indeed, they are.
Yeah. All right, that's it. I'm done with these theories. You've been listening to my theory corner.
Listen, we already have a separate podcast within our podcast. Let's have another podcast called Noah's Theories Corner. Noah's Theories are multiverse of madness.
No, thank you. I don't want to have that responsibility. I don't know if I could do this every episode. There was just so much, and I've been waiting for Lady Loki for a long time, so that was a lot.
She's here.
Yeah.
All right. So let us get into our special segment before the complete ending of our episode, which is OMTG, Oh My Tricks to God.
Oh, you changed it a little bit.
Well, you hated the last one.
I did really hate it.
Guys, comment below. Which one do you like better? In this segment, I would like to introduce you to Eris, who is hailing from Greece. So, while not officially a trickster god, Eris has been known to play dirty and set off the events that caused the Trojan War. Whoops. In some myths, she is the daughter of Zeus and Hera, and in others, she is the daughter of Nyx. Night. No matter
like who?
Night. That's it. No matter who her parents were, she is definitely known as the god of discord and strife. Seeing that she is the goddess of mayhem, she was conveniently left off the guest list of Peleus and Thetis' wedding. Whoops. So, in retaliation, she caused a ruckus. Eris dropped a golden apple into the party that was inscribed with the words, "For the fairest." She dropped it right in front of Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Of course, the three fought who it was meant for, and ultimately asked Paris to decide. So, each of the goddesses offered Paris a gift if he chose them. Ultimately, he chose Aphrodite, whose reward was to make Helen, the most gorgeous gal in all the land,
How sweet.
fall in love with him. The problem was Paris, okay, Helen was kind of married already. So, when Helen falls in love with Paris, her husband flipped and started the war. Eris's rage over not being invited to a wedding has me saying, OMTG.
Wait. That's funny. Wait, was it the Trojan War was real, right?
I'll tell you what, I don't know.
Because I was, that Brad Pitt movie's really messing with my mind because that seemed really historically accurate.
Troy.
And I got real confused when you just kept naming gods that were involved in it. I was like, wait, were the gods real?
I mean, all I know is that Eris dropped an apple and the apple caused insanity.
You know what's interesting? So, poison apple, Snow White. There's one connection there.
Mm-hmm.
There was 3 gods that had to be chosen. The person that had to choose it was named Paris. The Eiffel Tower, does it have 3 legs?
No.
Oh, okay.
It has 4.
No. I think it has 3.
I don't think so.
Google it.
All right.
Go. If I'm wrong, I'm cutting this whole thing out.
No, it has 4 big legs.
No.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Well, you can only see it from one side at once. So, I mean, for all I know, it only has 2 legs.
Right. That I'll take.
Guys, it's real late. So,
No, there's 4 legs. I've been there. I've stood underneath it.
I have 2. So, to be fair, when I went, it was very dark and there was a lot of rats. So,
Oh my.
do not go there at night. It is not great and not pretty.
Rat City.
Yeah, it's pretty gross.
The lights attract the rats.
Maybe.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Tricks are God.
Tricks of God. Oh my God.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to A Bite of, artwork and editing by our own Noah. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Instagram at A Bite of Pod and on Facebook at A Bite of. If you have questions, recommendations, or just want to say hi, you can email us at abiteofpod@gmail.com. You can find us on all podcast platforms. Please be sure to rate and review to spread the word. Hope you join us next time on A Bite of. Bye.